Hey, so this is day 7 in Hawaii. It's the 7th day, or maybe day 8, I forget. We've been here for a week. And I've just woken up out of bed, and I had to come record this immediately because these dreams were just like, oh my gosh, I definitely know without a doubt, absolutely, that this is a memory from a past life. And so I have got to tell you guys, because when I get things like this, it's super intense ones. I mean, if it activates anyone watching this the way that it activated me, it's worth recording. And also, I want to remember, so it's helpful to speak it out. And also, at least one of the people in this, the girl I'll refer to, I know who she is in this lifetime, so I'm not going to give her name away on this video because of privacy and everything. But I also want to record this to give to her. So okay, it was a series of 3 dreams. The first 2 were just dreams of mine representing other stuff from my unconscious, but then they led into the third one, so I'll just give you a quick touch of the first 2. The first one was, I was a supernatural being, and supernatural beings were trying to kill me. And the only way I could survive was by only thinking about light, completely light. And in this case, that was only thinking literally about light. No words, no thoughts, no concepts, nothing, just flooding my mind with white light, completely white light. That's all that kept me safe from being tortured and killed by some supernatural beings. And even when I woke up here in bed in the freaking hotel in Kauai, I still had to keep doing that because it was so deep that I was afraid that this wasn't real, that was real, and if I didn't keep flooding my mind with light, that I would go back there. So that was fascinating, but that was just in my head. That was just a signal post to this next one. The next one was, I was some other, I was myself, but a completely different life experience. I was living in a house, and there were crocodiles all over my kitchen, and I had put them there. Apparently, I had put them there. I had somehow dragged them into the kitchen and left them all over the kitchen, and I had laid blankets over top of them and practiced walking over them, because in this dream I was remembering that in ancient Egyptian lifetimes, that's one of the things I had to do in my trainings, and so I wanted to see if I could do it now. And I could, and I did, but then getting them out, somehow I just got distracted or didn't want to deal with it or something, so that then by the time I messed with them again, it had been like 3 or 4 days later, and they were really hungry, of course, hanging out in my kitchen. And I had a younger sister in that dream. She was about 3 years old, and she was a little girl with golden hair, which is kind of strange because clearly I'm so dark complected, but my father has light brown hair, which turns golden in the sun if he's in the sun a lot, so it's not completely outside the realm of possibility. Anyway, I was holding her in the dream because I felt like myself, and I might have been a little bit younger. I'm 32 now, so I might have been like in my early 20s or my late teens, but I was still an adult, kind of. So I was holding her, and I remember looking at her, and I'm just going to call her Cammie. And I was saying to her that she was beautiful, and the concept that she was beautiful had never crossed her mind before. She was a little girl. She said, "Really? I'm beautiful?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I had her in front of a mirror. I was describing to her what made her beautiful. And then I was telling her not to go in the kitchen with the crocodiles because they might hurt her. And then I was noticing that our animals were going in the kitchen with the crocodiles, and we had a little dog, which I don't have here in 3D, that I got out of there. And then I realized that my cat, Lilithia, she's a black cat that I do have here in 3D, was sleeping with the crocodiles, like snuggled up with them, sleeping with them. And one of them ran to eat her, and I was banging on it with a broomstick, and it moved on and hadn't eaten her at all. She was totally fine. And so I was trying to get her out of there, but she was like, "What? I'm fine. The crocodiles are my friends." So that was interesting. Classic Lilithia. Anyway, so I woke up after those first 2 dreams, and I was sitting here and wondering who that crocodile god was, because I did some Egyptian shaman training last year, and it was highly transformative in my life. And one of the gods in the pantheon was the crocodile god, and I could not remember his name, but I knew that clearly something was trying to come through about that. So I felt like if I could just remember his name, then I would be able to get whatever lesson this was. It was making crocodiles show up in my dreams, crocodiles that I had used to test myself, and then that I just forgot to deal with, that were still around, and I didn't want them around anymore. And I also felt like if I could just go into a meditation and then call up the crocodile god and ask him if he could help me remove them from whatever level of my subconscious they're just hanging out in, being dangerous, that he would help. So I drift back off to sleep this morning, and finally I remembered his name. If you're wondering what his name is, it's Sobek. And from what I understand about Sobek, from the times that I have interacted with Sobek, he's a very noble god. He's not at all a jerk. He's just a god of predators, right? So he acts accordingly, but he's not in any way dirty or wrong. So actually, I rather like him. So, okay, back to the dreams. Rather than having a nice little lovely meditation and asking him to help me get out the crocodiles and seeing them file out in peaceful one by one, I get dumped into this intense past life memory. And so here it is. It was definitely in Egypt. It wasn't here in Hawaii. But I do believe that there was travel between the realms way more easily than what we currently think in our modern culture was available to people back then. So I think somehow we could just kind of blink in and out. And I have heard rumors that they found ancient Egyptian artifacts in Sedona. So that was also one of the places that was on that grid of where people were going and coming. So, but now I'm in Hawaii. But I am led to believe that this was probably one of the bounce between places too, especially because this was apparently the site of Lemuria, which was the ancient civilization before Atlantis, but it was kind of on that same kind of train, right? Okay. Excuse me, I'm freshly awake. I woke up about 10 minutes ago. All right. So there was an event that we were going to. In this dream, I was a priestess of Anubis. And Anubis is the god. He has black skin. He looks like a jackal on his head. Pointy ears up like this. And he is the god of just after death. He's not the one who really has anything to do with who lives or dies, but he's kind of the scholarly, wizardly god who in that pantheon kind of runs the experiences that you have when you are transforming as an entity from the one that was kind of tied up in the physical life with your identity this time around and the things you loved and hated and all that kind of stuff to whatever the next place is that you go to. And I'm not going to project on what that is. I'm just going to say that in the Egyptian mythology and in their religion that they practiced, there was a series of stuff that happened to you to help determine where you were going to go. Not if you were good or bad, the way that a lot of current religions will tell you, oh, if you're good, you get thrown in this pile. If you're bad, you get thrown in that pile. It's not really how it went back there. It was kind of like, okay, there are a bunch of different doors, and let's see which one you most fit in. It's not that you're ever getting punished for anything. Sometimes you might have to balance out equations, but it's not like you're on the naughty list or anything. Okay. So the priesthood that I was in was that one. So we did a lot of our work in the other realms, less visible in this realm, but we were back and forth in the astrals all the time. And so often right after people died, we were assisting them to go through their experiences, trials, not like you can really fail, just like we see where you're at, okay? All right, moving on. So sometimes, apparently, I did not know this, but I figured this out, well, I found this out rather in the dream. Sometimes you would go have a trial in another temple that wasn't your priesthood. And we knew each other in the priesthood. And I was a female in that lifetime. I felt a lot like this version of me, in fact, almost identical. But I do also think that even though we incarnate in different bodies various times, all the time, I think that sometimes the equation of the way that our genes and our DNA kind of forms up is physically resembling. So I think that sometimes it's like if I had a picture of myself from certain lifetimes, I would look maybe like a fraternal twin to what I am now. And I think this was probably one of those because I just remember it that way. Okay, and I felt that way various times in my adult life. Okay, so in this dream, one of my sisters in the priesthood, and I don't know if she was a priestess of Anubis, like I was, or if it was another Egyptian god. And I know sometimes you cycle through the different temples before you decide, or it is decided for you by your vibration and your will, and also the people whose job it is to train you and see where you go, where you're supposed to stay. And so I don't know what was going on with her. I don't feel like she was only a priestess of Anubis, but I'm not sure. And it turns out that she, in my dream, was the same as Cammie, only she was a lot older. In my dream, she was much closer to my age, maybe only a few years younger. Excuse me. And she was the same, which is interesting because we were in Egypt, and I looked much like this, and she had this mane of golden hair, which is not necessarily that normal in Egypt, but I'm also assuming that, like other times in the priesthood, probably people would feel a call or be chosen to work in the temples, and then they would come from far-off lands. So I'm assuming that that was what had happened with her, or maybe her parents had come from another place or whatever. But that's what she looked like, which is interesting because that's what she looks like in this lifetime. That's how I recognized her after I woke up and was thinking about the dream. I was like, oh my gosh, it was her, the girl in this lifetime. But like I said, in this dream, I'm just going to call her Cammie. Okay. Sorry, you guys, this is really intense. All right. So the idea in the dream was that she was going through a trial in the Sobek temple, and I was going to be there witnessing. And like I said, in my experience, the god Sobek is very noble and regal and a good guy. But in this dream, I think what was happening was a coup, where the temple of Sobek's humans, which is always what messes it up. It's never these deities that are wrong. It's the human egos that get involved, and the desire for power and the power-hungry stuff, or whatever it is. In this case, it was power. Okay, so they messed it up. Let's see, where am I? 10 minutes. Okay, I'm probably going to go long. I might need to break this up into more than one video. Anyway, so, all right, we go into the temple, and this temple was kept. The only thing I've seen in this lifetime that would be close to the way this area felt were ship docks, like huge docks with all these warehouses and shipping containers and stuff like that on them. But this was back in ancient Egypt, so everything looked a little different. Rather than being made out of metal, things were made out of wood, stuff like that. And so we go to this temple, and it was just a big square warehousey kind of building. And in the front room, there were what looked like kind of pallets, like wood pallets and different, like partitions and stuff. And then there was an in-between room with sliding doors that would open. And then after the in-between room, which we didn't go into, then were where they kept the crocodiles. And there were tons of crocodiles. And I'm assuming there was a whole freaking labyrinth back there of stuff going on that I was never privy to because I was not a priestess of Sobek. Okay. So we're standing in the front. This is when things start to get gnarly. So I'm there. My friend is my sister, priestess sister, Cammie, is being prepared for the ritual. So I don't see her. And with me is someone who was kind of someone who oversaw when things would go between the temples. So this is some high level, very noble, very sacred, holy priest or priestess. I don't recall if this person was masculine or feminine, but there you go. I mean, they're kind of androgynous sometimes because they were so not into what happens in the man-woman games of the world, just very, into what they're doing, which is neither associating with masculine or feminine with whatever priesthood they were in, I'm not sure. But they're standing there with me, just watching everything, silent, impartial witness, just to make sure that everything goes well, apparently. And then we met the high priest, or one of the high priests of Sobek. And this is the guy. This is the freaking guy. I mean, you could tell he was insane. Like, he was just disgusting. I mean, I don't like to project. Anyone who's seen my videos knows that I don't like to call things good or bad. But this guy was criminally insane. You could absolutely see it in his eyes. He was a murderer. He was perverted. He had some crazy shit going on. And he was just not okay. And he had this look in his eyes where you could tell something was up his sleeve. Something was going on. But me and all the others, I mean, we were in the priesthood. We had taken all these vows to be always on the up and up. So I'm not going to do anything because I don't know what's happening. But I could feel and see very clearly. I mean, if you've seen someone who's a serial killer, crazy person who does all kinds of crazy things to their victims, you can kind of see it in their eyes. This is kind of how it was, a criminally insane person. All right. So he's preparing for the ritual, and I've heard before, and this might have been something that the overseer standing with me was saying to me, I'm not certain, something along the lines of, well, this temple is different, like the Sobek temple, it's different. The priests and priestesses here get eaten by the crocodiles, like, all the time. I mean, that's what they said. And so I'm also going to kind of assume, in retrospect, analyzing this dream, that this is when Egypt started to fall. Like, this is like, or at least the priesthood was starting to fall. This is not in their height of when it was a golden age kind of society and everything was going. Stuff like this is when things are going downhill. This is one of the marks of it. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Okay. So, moving on. He was prepping us for the ritual, and he had this crazy look in his eyes. And he was saying some of their scriptures. He was quoting some of their sacred scriptures in that priesthood about how, don't blame me if things go unexpected. don't blame me because this is the way of nature sometimes. This is the way of the gods sometimes. This is how things can happen. But he was doing it with this weird smirk. And I just knew something was off. But, I was just there to witness and to give emotional and energetic strength to my friend. I couldn't actually help. The trial wasn't for me, it was for her. And if you help someone through a trial, then you're not helping them at all, because even if they win, they didn't necessarily win. Whatever it was that trial would give their spirit that is now going to be used as strength by them, and their movements going on is not really strength anymore. So you can't. And it's part of your honor to not assist. So, okay, I'm just standing there. And as I'm looking through these fences, I see one of the priests get eaten by a crocodile, like it's nothing, like walking, and then one runs up behind and grabs him by the legs and drags him off into the dark, and he's eaten, right? Okay. But, I'm standing there in my center like, well, this is not my business. This is how things run in this temple. What is it for me to say anything? It wasn't, okay? It wasn't even an option to have any kind of opinion about it, because people choose to come there. They're not dragged into the temples. It's a calling. Kind of like now, right? Okay. So he's prepping everything for this ritual, moving things out of the way, moving areas in front of the doors so they can pull back the doors and get in to where the crocodiles are, and saying these scriptures over and over, like, don't blame me, sometimes it's the will of the gods that things go unexpected, and, kind of the survival of the fittest kind of quotes and stuff. All right. So then they bring in Cammie, and she's wearing, I think that, I remember wearing like kind of a white linen dress, and I think that she was wearing one too, but they were painting her with this liquid, and it was like thin, reddish brown kind of liquid, and I remember thinking that it was like some mixture made with like blood and stuff, and I remember thinking, that's strange, but I was like, okay, well, it must bait the crocodiles to come to her, and they must smell it and come to her, and that's part of the trial, I guess. But again, it felt a little wrong. But we didn't know. We weren't priests of Sobek. We didn't know what's going on. We just trusted that the other members of the priesthood were going to do what was right, do what was actually in the honor of the priests going through this training, so that they could help to give the people direction through being able to access other realms, not political coup, which is what this ended up being. So he's painting her with this stuff, and she's led into the room with all the crocodiles, like that big part past where I could go. I couldn't see anymore. And then all of a sudden he says it again. There's this loud noise. These crocodiles, and I remember thinking right before it happens, he's going to release these things. And then these crocodiles start running out to where we are, which they're not supposed to go here, and the lights go out. And I hear, so a few things happen at once. First, I start to try to defend myself because there are things coming to try to eat me. And also there are people trying to make them eat me. So I think I was fighting humans as well as animals at this point. And I hear in the back, in the dark, this crazy scream. And so my logical mind assumed that was Cammie, that she was getting killed in the trial gone wrong. But it didn't sound like a human. It was like this deep, long, like echoing kind of scream. But I didn't really have time to deal with it because there was a bunch of things happening, like, I'm trying to keep myself alive, much less help anyone else, because there are crocodiles all over me and humans trying to kill me, and this dude trying to, I think we were fighting. And okay, so at this point, I had this long rod, like a spear, to try to I think it was just a piece of regalia given by the other priests, and I think it was kind of a relic used back when we would all be right there with the crocodiles to kind of protect ourselves from them if they turned on us as part of the ritual. But we were no longer doing that because, like I said, this is after the civilization kind of coming down. So it was a trick. Kind of like if you've seen The Prince of Egypt, when they're singing the song and all of the things are happening where, like, they turn the staffs into snakes and stuff. They were no longer using the high sacred magic that they had at one time used. Now it was all, like, sleight of hand and kind of like modern magician kind of trick of the eye tricks. And that's what this was. These weren't strong spears. As soon as they got wet, and part of it was water was going everywhere, they were just like cardboard or like really thin wood that would just bend. So I'm trying to like poke at things to protect myself, and it's just bending, and the edge is not a knife. It's like a thin piece of wood or something painted to look like metal. So now everything's spilling into the outside. So we're in the sun and we're running, and there are crocodiles around, and we're protecting ourselves. And he and I are fighting. This crazy priest dude and I are fighting, and it's just nuts, very dramatic, very terrifying kind of stuff, but where you have to keep your absolute wits about you and not let yourself get afraid for even a second, or else you'll die. So fighting and figuring out what's going on and looking around and seeing what's happening, and realizing as this all is going on that this was a political coup, that what they were trying to do, because I wasn't a high priestess yet, but I was in training to be one. So it's kind of like I was like in the end of my training before I became one of the high priestesses of Anubis. And so they're trying to kill all of us off, because they didn't realize our power, because we didn't really have power as it looks here. But I remember thinking, ooh, once he kicks the bucket, I'm going to be there, because I remembered going and coming between the realms like that, and he's going to have to answer for all these things he's doing. And then we were trying to make sure we didn't get eaten by crocodiles. He and I are fighting. He's trying to get me eaten by crocodiles. I'm trying to keep him at bay. And then things start. Oh, I realized that they were trying to kill off the other priesthoods, the high people in the other priesthoods, because they were trying to take over to have political power, which is not how it went back then. Everything was kind of working in balance to keep the society going well, and also in touch with the ethers. And I'm just going to say right now that I don't believe that this stuff is instead of any kind of other god. I do believe there's one great big consciousness that runs the universe and that is everything in existence. And I don't believe that this stuff or any of the esoteric kind of things they talk about is kicking that out at all. I think that's kind of, it's like using a GPS. It's like using a map. All of it is true, and all of it, all the realms, all of the humans, entities, spirits, deities are all pieces of this great big one unified consciousness. So I just want to put that out there for anyone who may be wondering what my personal feeling is on this as I'm talking about it. Anyway, and also whatever way you get to that, whatever way you activate that within yourself and you feel a connection with that omnipotent, omnipresent source is fine, in my opinion, so long as, it is not infringing anyone else's connection. So I don't want to give the impression that I necessarily believe that this is the way to do things now, in this body, in this lifetime, or that I necessarily don't believe in other people's stuff. I think that all of them are valid. Okay, moving on. So, outside fighting, and I'm realizing this is a coup, this is a freaking political coup, and then all of his insanity makes sense, and all of his depravity makes sense, because he's some kind of criminally insane person, and he's also hungry for power, so of course he does weird things, Okay. So he and I are fighting. Finally, I somehow defeat him, and I think he dies. And then everything is kind of calming down, and, okay, not gonna die. The crocodiles are no longer after us. They're being now wrangled by people who are the correct priests in that priesthood, figuring it down. But everything is still up, and all the adrenaline is still up. I mean, we're just fighting for our lives not 2 minutes ago. And, okay, the trial is done. We are standing up. We start to get put up on this platform next to a building, but I'm looking at the corner over here because I feel like something is going to come around there trying to kill me again, because things have been coming out trying to kill me for the past 20 minutes as everything's been going crazy. And then I see, this is interesting, I see one of my other sister friends in the priestesshood, and she's not Anubis or Sobek. She's something totally different. And her physical body looked like an ancient Hawaiian, really big and strong and round and grounded. And she was wearing colored bright reds and yellows. And I don't know what priesthood or priestesshood that was. I just know that I respected and trusted her. It's interesting because now this pillow that I'm sitting at right now, this one, is the colors that she was wearing, which I only just noticed, and so is this one that is sitting on. So fascinating, right? Okay, and she was a friend of mine, and I saw her come and stand at that corner, and I knew that with her there, I didn't have to be worried about my life from right there. I was like, okay, good, because she was strong and powerful, and she would keep, hold it down right there for us, because she was one of us. Okay, great. And then the person who was overseeing all of it, who hadn't been around since things started going crazy, since the lights went out and the crocodiles came charging out and stuff, she or he is there again, presenting to me Frickin' Cammy. She survived. And she's all covered with this stuff, obviously has been through a fight. And she gave me my sister back, and we're standing there together as victors in this trial. And I realized that the person overseeing it had felt, kind of like I did, how right before he released crocodiles, I was like, he's going to let them out. And Risey kept saying that thing over and over. I was like, something's going to go wrong. But I didn't know that because, you trust your brethren. And this person had realized, the one overseeing had realized something might go wrong too. So they gave Cammy a knife to kind of hide in the folds of her dress. And the loud scream had been her killing. So she wasn't going to go through a trial. They were just going to sacrifice her to this crocodile, to their big granddaddy crocodile, as an offering for this coup, which I only realized at the very end. It's all kind of coming intuitively as we're standing there realizing what had just happened, because we were used to not needing 3D proof. We had honed our intuition well enough to know when something was true. And so I'm realizing after the fact everything that's going on here. And so Cammy had this knife that the person had given her, not sure she was going to need it, because if it's a proper kind of initiation trial, then you don't need violence, according to this, apparently, right? I don't know, I'm telling you now, that's what it feels like. But just in case, she had given this to her, and sure enough, she had killed this great big granddaddy crocodile trying to eat her, and that was the scream I had heard. Rather than be sacrificed as one of the first priests and priestesses to be sacrificed in this political/spiritual coup that these humans were trying to do to put their deity above the others rather than equal with them in the pantheon and to get political power. So there was Cammy, totally survived, had kicked ass when they tried to kill her. And so I gathered to me, so proud of her, and we're standing there, and boom, the dream ends. So that's what happened. So there's a glimpse for you into when the Egyptian spirituality, priesthood, monarchy started to fall and how some of that crazy stuff went down. I don't know if I'll ever be able to find something like that in a historical record or not. To be honest with you, I'm probably not going to look it up because I'm just probably not. It's just kind of something I'll store away as part of my own spiritual arsenal of knowledge. But I thought I'd share it, and I also wanted to record this to give to Cammy. Okay, so much love. Hope you found that entertaining. And I'm enjoying Hawaii. Now I finally know why I've been getting insomnia, because I was prepping for that. And then last night I did sleep okay, and the night before that I did as well, which was the night, I've been sleeping okay for 2 nights. The night before, the first night, was when that intense UFO was seen over the western side of the U.S. So I don't think that those things are necessarily coincidental. I think maybe I was feeling some crazy energies going on in the ethers. So anyway, I'm going to end this video now. Much love, and I'll see you again very soon.